All right, so today I want to talk about this tweet from Dave Ramsey. Now, to start out, I'm not 100% sure that this is a correct figure, but I do have some things that I know are correct figures that I wanted to bring up. And if I were to venture to guess, I'd be pretty confident that this is pretty accurate. But he basically says 79% of millionaires inherited $0. So I wanted to kind of have a little bit of a rant about some of these leftist garbage ideas that they constantly bring up about. I mean, the main one being, oh, well, wealthy people are only wealthy because they got lucky and they're just exploiting people. But the reality is that that's largely untrue. That's largely untrue. I mean, you think of some examples. Well, I mean, you look at Jeff Bezos. I mean, this is probably the best example. He's the richest man in the world. Well, the average Amazon salary, I believe, is like $60,000 to $70,000. So the average salary of someone who works at Amazon is actually a little bit above the median income of the average person. So if Jeff Bezos just got rich by exploiting people, well then why wouldn't he be paying people minimum wage, right? Like the average salary should be like 30 grand if he was just exploiting people, but no, the reason why the rich get rich is because they have very good ideas. I mean, there definitely is some luck involved. I'm not going to say that, but the rich get rich because they have tend to have a very high degree of perseverance, of ambition. I think those are probably the biggest things when it comes to getting rich. Not only that, too, well, most of these people, it wasn't an overnight thing. I mean, I think Jeff Bezos, he worked like a decade out of his garage to get Amazon up and running. The same thing happened with Apple too. Like Steve Cook and those guys, yeah, they worked out of their garage too, I believe as well. Like these are guys that are like I think that they were like high school dropouts, maybe college dropouts. Like none of these guys have college education. So um, yeah, the main point being is that the left wants to, and again, I think it's kind of a guilty conscience thing, and that if they can be like, oh, they just got rich because they exploited people and they just got lucky, they can sleep good at night knowing that they're not living up to their expectations, right? So I think that's the first thing. And I mean, the other thing that I was listening to a podcast on that I heard is that 2/3 of millionaires do it through investing, right? Like the idea that this is another, outright lie of people that they see is that the rich people you see the most are the people that get rich in the least likely ways, at least for the average person. It's the athletes, the musicians, those kind of people. But those are the least likely, right? The most likely way to get rich for the average person is to simply be smart with their money. And the other thing another stat that I heard is that about a third of million, which obviously is a minority, but it's still a pretty decent amount, of millionaires never earn six figures ever once in their life. So what does that tell you? That they were just people who were very smart with their money. And I mean, if you look it up, I mean, if you do the math, if you invest $500 a month for 40 years, compounding at 6% interest, that's almost exactly $1 million. So if you and not to mention 6% is a relatively conservative number. I mean, if you're doing well with your investments, you'll be able to get more than that. So again, so 25 to 65, you start at 25, you would be at least a millionaire, perhaps a multi-millionaire if you really play your cards right. Um, and that's the thing too. Like $500 a month, that's a decent amount, but that's not a huge amount, right? Like if you're making, the median income, you're making probably what, 5 grand a month roughly. I mean, that's what, 60 grand a year. That's about, I think that's a little bit more than the average salary in Canada. So if you put, let's say, roughly an eighth, a little bit less than an eighth of your income, you're talking 10 to 15% of your income, and you simply invest that money and you start when you're 25, you will be a millionaire by the time you're in your 60s, right? So the idea that it's just simply getting lucky, no, it isn't. It's about being consistent, and it's about being consistent is the key, right? Because you got to do it for a while. Now, that's not to say too, for all you know, you could hit it and you could, you put, $10,000 into a stock that goes up, 10, 20 times. Well, that's 100,000, $200,000 plus interest right there, right? So that's another thing to bring up too, is that if you play your cards right, not only will you be a millionaire, but you'll be a multimillionaire, and that's not even including. And the other thing too to bring up is that's not even including the assets that you have. If you have a house, you have a car, you have land, any of that stuff, which again most people are going to have, especially when they're that old. So that's $1 million just in investments. That's not even including pension. That's not even including the value of all your assets, right? So, if you have a $500,000 house, that means that your net worth just between your house and your investments is $1.5 million. When you include all your benefits and all your other stuff, you're probably looking at $2 million, right? So that is something to bring up. That the idea that people that get rich are just rich by accident and they just exploit people. No, it's complete BS. Now, like I say, there definitely is some luck involved. There definitely is. I think that there's a decent amount of people that are exploiting people, but most people, it's simply by being smart with money. And the problem is that, I mean, the reason why the left hates the truth so much, is that they want to just give people free money. They want to reward people for not being smart with money, right? Because they basically want to pay poor people to be poor, which only creates more people, right? So that's why they push back so much against this kind of stuff. That's why they push back so much against this kind of stuff, is because they don't care about. I mean, they care about the poor to some extent. They don't want them to die, but they care about the poor only enough for them to live, off, to like 25 grand a year, right? So the idea that they care about the poor is just a front for wanting socialism, really. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to bring up today. Is um, getting rich is not something that's, I mean, and that's the thing too, it depends on your definition of rich. I don't think that having a net worth of $1 million is necessarily rich nowadays. I mean, it really isn't, considering a lot of people that own if you own a 1,500 square foot house in Toronto, yeah, you're probably a millionaire right there, right? So I'm talking about $1 million of straight, cash or investments, right? So that's something that's a lot more impressive, because when you don't even include the value of all your assets, that's why a lot of people are, not most people, that's why a lot of people are millionaires, right? Because they own a $500,000 to $1 million house. So anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Follow me on those other platforms. I got them all linked in the description. Very important that you follow me there, so make sure you check those out as well.